Oh, hello, welcome everyone. It's so wonderful to have you here. Thank you for coming and participating in the Elder Speak Journey to Wisdom 2025. My name is Teresa Delitzenberger. I am founder and facilitator for the Elder Speak program. I want to thank the Icicle Creek Center for the Arts for this beautiful Snowy Owl Theater, and to Eric and Craig for their wonderful technical assistance. Thank you. And to our cherished volunteers. We are grateful to our many sponsors. Without them, they make our program possible. And we'd also like to express our deep gratitude to Rufus Woods. Every year, I get emotional because it's such a big deal. Every year, Rufus interviews each of the four elders individually and writes an article in the Wenatchee World about them. And in this way, he not only introduces the elders to the community, he deepens the experience of Elder Speak for each elder. So thank you, Rufus. Okay, Robin will be next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Pobbs, co-founder and facilitator of the Elder Speak program. Today, you will listen to the 2025 elders, Glen Carlson, Mary Roy, Joe Roy, and Ron Scutt, as they share their life stories and their wisdom. I'd like to say a little bit about what happens during our 10-month Elder Speak program, because to me it's really quite magical. The elders meet twice a month for 2 hours, and they share their life story with each other and look deeply into their significant life events. In doing this, deep friendships form, and a new appreciation of each precious life experience arises. This program doesn't make anyone a better person or a different person. That's not its purpose. What it does is anchor each elder more deeply into the gift that their life actually is, all of it. The result is a deeper appreciation of the value of elderhood, a sense of wisdom that can be shared, and a desire to contribute to their community. Thank you so much for supporting Elder Speak. And I'll turn this over to Robin.
Hello, I'm Robin Bohl, and in 2020, Deb and Teresa asked me to join them in the Elder Speak program, for which I am eternally grateful. It has been just a heartfelt part of my life. So, we are about to show you a 20-minute film which will introduce you to the elders. They're interviewed and filmed each year in January by the students of Eric Link's digital media class at the Wenatchee Valley Tech Center. We'd like to give a big thanks to Eric and his students. They create this film and have done it every year for us. Please enjoy the film.
My name's Ron Scutt. I was born in 1947. At birth, I was christened Alan Tigg. I was then put up for adoption and 2.5 years later, I was adopted by Ed and Nina Scutt and named Ronald Scutt. And the way we start here, I have a feeling that the adoption and the 2.5 years between birth and adoption had a significant effect on my life. And I guess I find myself thankful for both the Tig half for giving me birth. My mom and my dad, Ed and Nina, they taught me basically, Dad is, they can't take your education away. And he was very firm on that, supportive of education and whatnot. And my mom's, Nina, she was very attentive to the fact that whatever you do, do your very best at it. And so those two themes have carried through my life. And then in 5th grade, I had a teacher named Mr. Brewer. And in the springtime of that year, I said that we came in from recess and Mr. Brewer was talking, and it just, a certain intuition went through me. And that intuition was, I want to be like Mr. Brewer. I want to be a teacher. During the first year, we were at Washington State. I was walking around campus, and I saw a sign on one of the bulletin boards. One-room school in Idaho is looking for a teacher. And when I saw that sign, I went, if I got back into teaching, I'd like to be in a one-room school. She says, oh, here, Stehegan, Washington. They're looking for a teacher. One-room school. It's now, we went in April to go interview. In May 17th, our first son was born. And we were just on top of the world. I started teaching in September. But really, the question I had was, how do you do it? You can enjoy teaching, but when you think of teaching grades 1 through 8, that's a whole different ballgame. First year, I tried to contact teachers that had one-room school experience. And I talked to 2 teachers, and they were not easy to find. I talked to 2 teachers that had done it, and I realized that one had taught for only 1 year, and another had taught for 3 years. And so that was it, and they didn't really have much information. And I remember sitting in the classroom the last day of my first year. And I'm sitting on a chair, and I put my elbow, my head's in my hands, and I thought, what am I going to do next year? Anytime you ask a heartfelt question, you'll get an answer, one way or another. So I asked the question. I started working on new ways of doing things. And then I'm working in the old school during the summer, and a couple walk in. And they're looking around the room, and they're saying this, and they know we have grades 1 through 8. And they say, this is like a Waldorf school. I started finding out more about Waldorf education during the next several years. They integrate physical activity and the arts in the education to a great degree. And I found this really enlivened our educational experience in the classroom. But you think that I've been in Stehegan almost 50 years now, and the games that children play, they're the same games they were playing back then. We don't have the internet in the school, and that's out of choice, because we figure everything that they can do with their hands, their imaginations, their capability, it's better for them to create their own work, usually better for them to create their own work. I just love being with the children. They're alive, they're living the now. I guess that's something I realized too, even at a young age, this idea of what I call living in the now is very important. And if you can do it, you stay young.
My name is Joseph Roy. I was born in the Iroquois country of Illinois, the northern part, along the Kankakee River. One of the things that was being born into this family was that they loved trying out new things. See, at that point in time, my dad being older, he retired by the time I was 5 from his radiology stuff. And we moved to St. Petersburg, Florida. Well, the beauty of being a kid in Florida was all of this really undeveloped area to go and play in. And I loved to go out and explore. My dad being in medicine kind of always thought I would go into medicine, but I always had a much greater curiosity about the mind and the soul. So college was an enjoyable time. I was not a good student. A lot of interest. My mind would wander. I'd go off and study something else. But that energy helped me get a lot done. And so it was good energy. I just had to learn how to use it. So I enlisted in the Marines. Well, I should say, I get a letter from the Marines, and they say, your friends and neighbors have selected you. And I say, no, you're not going to select me. I'll choose. So I decided, if I'm going to be in the Marines, I'm going to be an officer in the Marine Corps. So I went into the Marines, and I became a lieutenant in the Marines in those days. I was a good Marine, eager. Communication was my field. And I'm sitting in a tactical meeting, and my wife and I have gotten married, okay? And she's finishing up her senior year, sitting in a meeting in Virginia. And I hear this voice behind me. And the voice says to me, Joe, this is not why I created you. Whew. A lot of feeling comes back. I'm deep in the Marines, and you just don't say, hey, sorry guys, this is not working for me. The essence of it is my wife was very supportive. And what was unfolding was that I was becoming a conscientious objector. I had never really thought about that, never heard that word before. But I just knew killing other people was not right. My wife and I became more and more involved with the inner city. When I was off duty with the Marines, I was teaching, this is going to seem odd, nonviolent conflict resolution in the inner cities of Baltimore. So the reality was, I had been a good Marine. The commanding officer said, I agree with you in a sense, is what he said. I am here to protect our country so we can work on finding ways to solve the problems of our country. And you're going to go out and work in the inner city and do it. I want to get you out of here and in there. So we went to work, my wife and I, volunteers with Coretta King. Martin was dead. Jesse Jackson, Andrew Young, and people like that, working together to build a place called Resurrection City. And that was an amazing transformation for this white boy from Chicago area. What I learned back in that transition in the Marines was to listen to the voice of God within me and to try and discern that voice. And so quieting my mind and quieting my body became an important part of my life. I've always had that kind of desire to sort out, I'm a pilgrim here on earth. This journey, our life here on earth is so small in the big picture of the earth, and yet we're here for a purpose and trying to understand that purpose. I go back to 6 months of study on that topic with my favorite professor, Harold Beck, back in Boston, where I did one of my graduate work. He said, the wisdom is what we have when we're in the crossroads of life. You may, and what he means by that is, you may have been preparing for something, or you may have thought you knew what you were going to do, but if you going down this road thinking, here's what I'm going to do, and now you kind of get T-boned in the intersection of life. Wisdom is what you draw on then. I've been healthy all my life. What's this thing about getting sick? And bam, you get sick. Or I've always had my parents with me, and now they're not there. Bam, you get nailed. That's where we draw on our wisdom.
I was born in 1946 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My father came from an immigrant family. His mother came to the United States when she was 13 from Denmark. We moved to southern Illinois, outside Champaign-Urbana, because my father was a professor there. And I had lots of space to run around outside. I had a younger brother and a younger sister, and my father would mow pathways in the pasture next to us so that we could kind of have a little house or something like that. When I was in third grade, I thought that I wanted to be a ballerina. I had never taken ballet lessons. I just thought that was a really cool thing. And then when I was in fourth grade, I wanted to be a veterinarian because I loved animals. Maybe 12 or 13. I loved reading still, and I loved nature. And I thought, well, maybe I could be a teacher. Another thing my parents had modeled, other than just accepting people of all ethnic groups, races, ages, with love, which came, I think, from their faith, loving your neighbor as yourself. And they also modeled peace. When I went to college, with our campus ministry and other people, I was in protests for the Vietnam War. I met Joe, I met my husband on a train, but we talked a lot about our values while we were getting to know each other. We talked about our faith. He was Catholic, I was Protestant. We talked about what we had in common. We talked about the war. We talked about what we wanted to do with our lives. And we had so much in common. So we got married in December, and we both applied to be teachers in Baltimore. Wanted to go out west. We'd been to Oregon, and that was the first time for both of us. It was the first outbound school, and we started applying to places for teaching. Wenatchee was the one who wanted us. We taught in the high school. The high school was exciting to us. We were able to create our own classes. I taught propaganda techniques, which was teaching students how to recognize advertising and political rhetoric. Joe went to seminary in Boston, and I went. We had our first child there. So in 1973, our oldest son, who's 52 now, was born, and we wanted to have a larger family, but we didn't want to have more than 2 born to us. So we started to look into adoption. Our children were needing to have some kind of education. I had a little school in our home for maybe 6 years. And as our children grew, I wanted to do more. And another teacher and a bunch of parents and I started a school for 6 years. It was a K-3 school, and it was called Wenatchee Primary School. It was a wonderful experience. But the time came when I needed to make some money because our kids were going to be getting ready to go to college. And so we closed Wenatchee Primary School, and I was looking for another teaching job. 20 years at Orondo School, and I loved every bit of it. Some of the things that were important to us were community and children, education, and peace and justice. When I was teaching 4th grade in Orondo, one boy made a little poster of that. You can do hard things, and we posted it in our classroom. Just as a reminder for all of us, yes, some things can be hard, very hard, but you can do them. And it's not all of a sudden, voila, we can do it. It's steps.
My name is Glen Carlson. I was born in Duluth, Minnesota. I had a fortunate raising, I guess I would say. So in October of 1968, I arrived in San Diego and began boot camp training, and then began to realize that my life was a lot different. And perhaps I had made a mistake. It was a little rougher, a little different. I was living with a bunch of different people with all kinds of different experiences. And yet there was a camaraderie in the difficulties that we face together. As I've come to learn, that's one of the best ways to have a deep relationship is sharing the suffering. And ended up in flying into Da Nang on December 26th of 1969. I mean, it was hard to go to Vietnam, but it was harder to leave because of what I mentioned earlier in the camaraderie that I had with the men that I served with. I had a difficult time until one of my dear friends that I joined the service with, he went in the Marines, came back he was in Mexico or something, and he pulled me into this. He said, we got together, he said, come on, I want to introduce you to some people. And it was somewhere in the 48th block of Duluth and Lakeside. And this was a commune of people known as 48th. And it was getting around these people, hippies, just the lifestyle, that I was able to begin to unclench. Started looking for a place to stay, and around the grapevine of the group, they said, well, you know you know Marnie Anderson, don't you? And I said, well, no, I don't think so. Well, I found out where she was, and I went up to meet her, and lo and behold, another pivot point occurred in my life. And I said, well, I might be going to Chelan. Do you want to go with me? Yes, she said. And we came out here, and that would have been in 1974. But in the meantime of that time, after we had come out, Marnie got cancer. And this was in the 1998 that she was diagnosed. And it was not, it was a serious form of cancer. And we went forward through that. You know, when you don't have a future, you can really concentrate on the present. And that's exactly what we did. And we had some of the most vibrant, alive times during that season, which lasted almost 5 years. It's funny to say, and my daughter, Anna, will say the same thing, that it's funny to say that this was a positive experience when it comes at such a cost. But we learned so much about ourselves and about the process of what it is to approach death and meet it and accept it and what you can get out of it. I think of Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning. What he ultimately said is that you can have everything taken from you, but you still, as long as you draw a breath, have the decision, the power of decide how you're going to handle it. It was a privilege to do so, to be a caregiver and to walk this sacred journey with Marn. So it wasn't a burden, it was life at its fullest.
Well, wasn't that great? What a fantastic film. Again, thank you to Eric Link and his class. I just want to give you a little heads up of what's happening right now. The elders are coming onto the stage. We will be, go ahead. They will be sitting down, and when everyone is settled, we'll begin the actual, each elder will share for 10 minutes. When that is finished, it will be time for the question and answer part of the program. And those of you who are on the live feed, you will be able to ask questions through Morgan, who is running our computer part of this. It's way above my head, but Morgan's great at this. So you will be able to ask questions, as will you in the audience. And toward the end of our speaking time here, Robin will give even more detailed instructions. So we're about to begin. And it's me again. Let me grab my notes. So I will begin by introducing Glen Carlson. Glen has a very big, beautiful heart. This is hard to get through. He feels things deeply and gives generously of himself. Glen cares, and we've seen it over and over. Glen looks for the beauty in each day, each moment, and is willing to go into difficult and painful territory to be of help to others. Glen's wisdom is, you can't go wrong by doing the right thing. So my question to you, Glen, you can't go wrong by doing the right thing is a catchy phrase with a catch. It expresses noble intent, but is light on the steps of execution. How do we recognize the right thing when we see it?
I'm glad you asked me that question. And I also want to say that I'm one of those people, like you've noticed when you're watching TV or something and it says, this will have flashing lights in it, this movie or whatever it is. Well, I kind of have that thing where that's why I'm doing this, because of the lights. So, what was the question again?
It's about the right thing. How do we know what the right thing is?
It is a good question. And I want to say this, that before I even launch off here, is that how humbled I am to have spent the last months with these wonderful souls. Truly, it's an honor and a humbling experience. And our guides, our three wonderful elder guides, are just incredible. And anyway, in fact, I have 5 life point / transition zones that I've identified through this process of going back through my history and that. This has caused me to start on number 6, and it begins when we began in January. That there is something that was turned loose within me that causes me to know there's been a shift in my life going forward. Now, what unfolds, I'm not sure. What's the right thing to do? My brother and I were weaned on wisdom's milk. I mean, in a sense, with my mom and dad, he's Swedish, she's French, she's an artist, he's a worker, and yet they spoke these terms through my life. This is just one of them. And it made a difference with me because here it is, coming out when I look back through all these years, 75 years, and what they had to say. I grew up hearing wisdom and seeing acts of love. This too shall pass was something I can see my mom in the kitchen, or always encouraging us when we were going through a bout of anything. And it was a hedge against the storms that we all face in life. And that by just saying those things and hearing them, not necessarily knowing, it helped build what is unfolding in my life today and has been. That wasn't meant to be was another one. Waved like a sage, burning sage through the house was to say that, to cleanse the air, to say we can put up, we've lost hope in this particular thing, but it wasn't for us this time. I used to get letters in Vietnam from my mom. On the back of it, there was this alphabet, all caps, and it was TWWSAFAPWKWTAG. People say, what's that on the back of your letters? I said, the whole world stands aside for a person who knows where they are going. So that was always part of it. And then it became part of my letters and these language as my children grew, our children grew. And in a sense, whoa, I'm just doing the introduction and it's half over. No, not necessarily though. This is figuring out what the right thing to do was left up to us. We were challenged. We were placed in a position where we can open ourselves up to life around us by example, by word. These 5 life pivot points started in 1958, and I was 8 years old, and it had to do with a rather difficult time that I went through with my life with my 3rd grade teacher. And we moved from our apartment to a new house, and in that house, we got a cabin with it. And so we left our family, not siblings, but rather aunts and uncles and cousins in Lake Nebagamon. There was a massive change. And it was an exchange of innocence for experience. I'm not going to go any further into that, but to let you know, that was my first recognition of something's been lost, but something's been gained. 1968, as I said, or you heard about it, I joined the Navy, went to Vietnam, Brown Water Navy. Not the best place to grow up. And a lot of it confused me. I came home not hardened, but really not knowing quite where I was, and it took a while to get back to that. The next one was from order. The next one was from order to disorder. And beyond that, this is where I found and came together with who would be the wife of my children, Marnie, and the one who I spoke about who got cancer. our story and what we have here is don't bank worry, and this is probably where this ends. But the idea that once going through cancer is to realize that if we worry, we're spinning our wheels and spending ourselves in something that's bringing us no rewards whatsoever. And with that, that's what became the experience that I kind of alluded to. And then finally, in 2014, I got a birthday gift from my brother with a link to a guy by the name of Richard Rohr. And I was in kind of another one of those legs, and it opened my life up to mindful living. And also over the last 11 years, that has been my direction, and my energy has gone into that. What do we have?
You have 1 minute and 23 seconds.
Let me roll up my sleeves. I want to say that after Marnie died and there was this gap, I met Tracy. Well, I had met Tracy at the church because we attended that. And after my time of solo living, I became more and more interested in her and how she lived her life. And the woman she was, this servant she worked at the church for almost 30 years, volunteer, and I saw her mother, who was a servant to, and I got to tell you, one thing led to another. And we've almost been married 20 years now. And I'm so thankful for her, who she is, and what we're about. There you go.
Thank you, Glenn.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you. Okay. So Mary. Glenn's time is just running out on my phone. I'd like to introduce you all to Mary Roy. Mary is a joy to be with. She's dedicated to helping all beings, and this includes people, animals, and our planet. She brings calm, laughter, and an ability to listen closely, hearing more than is spoken. Mary has a brilliant, open mind and an inquisitive soul. Mary's wisdom is life is a pilgrimage, a journey. What I expect is not necessarily what I get, and expectation can be the enemy of the gift. So my question for Mary is, what do you mean when you say that expectation can be the enemy of the gift?
Okay, I'd like to say that everyone is on a pilgrimage, a journey. And so how we deal with that, whether it's what we expect or what we get and are surprised at, is what we have to deal with. And Glenn, you said things like that too. The phrase, expectation is enemy of the gift, came from a poem that I wrote about 30 years ago. The rest of the poem is forgettable, but I remembered that part. And although there have been many influences on my life, my family, growing up and my family now, my teaching, the things that have been important to me in developing something I didn't mention before, a preschool called Mustard Seed Neighborhood Center, which was for low-income people, that lasted 25 years, for Lori Peak and I doing Wenatchee Primary School together. Thank you, Lori. She's sitting right there with the crutches. There have been many influences with my life, but I'd like to focus on the walking of the Camino de Santiago, the pilgrimage 500 miles across northern Spain, which my husband and I did when I retired, and that was in 2012. We thought we were in control. We had heard about the pilgrimage after reading Paulo Coelho's book, The Pilgrimage. He's a Brazilian, best known for the book, The Alchemist. He has kind of a magical realism way of looking at things, and it was intriguing. And then we talked with other people who had walked. We read everything about people who had walked also. We got good hiking shoes and a good backpack, and we knew that we could carry the 20 pounds that we decided we could do. And I retired. Joe was recovering from cancer surgery and was doing okay, so we went. And we were prepared. We had a great guidebook, the Briarly guidebook, and we were confident. It wasn't like The Way, the movie with Martin Sheen, which he takes his son's backpack and hiking boots and goes off to bury his son or spread his ashes along the Camino. It wasn't like that. We were really prepared. We'd walked. It was just, we were confident. Well, as soon as you know, and that is a dangerous word, you know what's going to happen, you can be sure that there will be things that you don't expect that just don't fit. So we are not in control. So we have expectations like being prepared, whether it's education or practice or whatever, but there are gifts that are waiting for us to pick up when those expectations don't turn out. And I'll share a couple with you. We knew about blisters and we knew about pain, and we had special things that we were going to do with our feet, and we got blisters. Everybody got blisters. There were several gifts that came to us through this, and two of them were nurses from Ireland who were on the Camino with us. And every time we came to an albergue, and they were there, the hostels were called albergues, they would go around to people and they would say, "How are your feet?" And people would take off their shoes and stick their feet up, and these angels would minister with their medical knowledge to people's specific needs there. We were walking along, and it was a hot day. We went in October. It was a hot day, and we had a goal. We were going to walk through to this particular place, and we saw a group of pilgrims standing in a stream with their shoes and socks off, and they were laughing, and they said, "Come on over, come on over." These are Korean pilgrims, and we couldn't really understand them, but they said, "Come on over." I know that's what they said. And so we went over, took off our shoes, and we didn't make as many miles in that day as we thought we were going to, but that was a gift. It was a blessing. You have to be vulnerable. You don't know if you are right or if you have all the information. And you have to be humble. You realize that you're not in control and you don't have to have all the answers because there are other people around you ready to give you gifts. What is important is not material things. There were people who came on the Camino with huge backpacks, and the post offices in the little towns that we went through said, "We can ship it back for you." And they did. They knew how to do that. We saw things being given away. It might be something simple, like giving your water to a person who was out of water, and that was an important thing. We watched a young German pilgrim give his guitar away. He had brought his guitar, carrying it on his back, and he thought that he would need it because he would have so much time alone. He said, I know I don't need it. And we were at a very small albergue. He gave it to the host of that albergue. And the people who were standing around, other pilgrims, one of them was a pilgrim from Brazil. He said, may I play it? He took that and played the most beautiful music, just crouched there in this kind of tent that was the albergue. And the people around him received that gift. So there were 3 gifts that time. There was the gift of the guitar, which he had expected he needed, but he didn't. There was the gift of the pilgrim playing it, which he didn't know that was going to happen. We didn't know, and the giver of the guitar didn't know. And there was the joy that it gave to everyone who was standing around. Another gift that we just didn't understand was that you can retrace your steps when you've made a mistake. Often you don't get a chance to go back and correct things. But one of the times that we stopped at a pub to eat lunch, we're tired, we're eager to get on the road, and we leave and get down the road about 2 kilometers, and I said, did you pay? Joe said, no, you paid. Said, I didn't. So we turned around and walked 2 kilometers back and paid the pub man, who was surprised. He said, I know you didn't pay, but I'm glad that you came back. So that was a gift to us, that we could do that. And after the Camino, we knew that we could do that again. We were hiking up along a dry gulch and sat down to rest, and I left my sunglasses, and I didn't realize that we started hiking back about 20 minutes, and I said, I left my sunglasses. And we turned around and hiked back. It wasn't something that we even thought twice about. We knew we could do that. We'd done it before. 1 minute? Okay. Okay. So one time we thought we needed to take a bus. We were so tired. And we were in a larger town looking at our map and trying to figure out how to get to this bus terminal. And a woman in Spanish stopped us and said, can I help you? And we showed her on the map where we were going. She asked people around her. Nobody knew. So she said in Spanish, I'll take you. And she led us about 6 blocks through these winding streets to the bus stop. And she said, that's my little Camino. That's my little pilgrimage. We couldn't find a bus to take us, but already we had received a gift from her, and it was an unexpected gift. So our journeys, our pilgrimages continue, and lots of wisdom from that. We have to be open to changing plans. We have to notice and pay attention. We have to slow down, and we have to focus on what is important, keeping an open mind, keeping on learning, and keeping on being surprised. I'm out of time, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, you can ask me about the last point. But prepare to be surprised when you relinquish your expectations and something new happens. That's it.
That's beautiful, Mary. Thank you. I was thinking about that with this program. There's been lots of surprises. So I'd like to introduce to you Joe Roy. Joe brings his whole self into everything he does. He looks at each side with both heart and soul. His kindness shines through everything, every thought and every action, always mindful of others. With humility and an open mind, he seeks truth in all he encounters. Joe's wisdom is, love and fear are important teachers calling us home. And that brought up a lot of questions for me, the main one of which is, how do love and fear teach you, and how do they call you home?
I thought it was an odd title and wondered who cooked that up, and realized it felt like the right title for the work. I was born to older parents. My father was born in 1897. He was a Navy corpsman in World War I in France. My mother was born in 1901. She studied classical voice in Chicago. So I was born to these older parents. My father, part of a very large extended French Catholic family, my mother English. And in my father's family, most of them they were all self-taught, and they were musicians and singers. And they had played in the big bands of Chicago area. And so here I come into this world of music. And yet, the backdrop of that was that my mother, in about the early 30s, was being treated for corns and bunions, and the bottoms of both of her feet were completely burned off, third-degree burns. They had to take grafts from her thighs and put them on. So I came into that of the joy of music and being together, and the depth of suffering and sadness around my mother's situation. As a boy growing up, I often sort of listened to that contrast of the love and warmth of the extended family. Although they'd argue and fight, they'd always say, let's sing, let's go play music, and they'd relax. And, there'd be that beauty of just embracing life together. My mom would join in, but when they were gone, I found over the years the sense of the fear of feeling my mother when she would go into pain, and my mother when she was not, and she was very joyful. And so by the age of 3 or 4, I was kind of watching that emotion move within myself and wondering, how is it that at a body level I become aware of these feelings happening in my mother? And that sort of led me in the beginning to feel that trend, that chord running through my life. I was active in care of my mother and her feet, helping my dad. He was very active in it. And so that was that kind of growing up. Older parents are often quieter. I found how I could operate under the radar and say, I'm going to the library to study. I'll be back later. And God knows where I went. But I would go out exploring. I would have a girlfriend. It was all kinds of things. And that became a part of my life, of this ability to, whatever's happening, I can find my way through it. So listening to those emotions of love and fear became almost teachers of what was happening within me and guided me. Through elementary school, into high school, I was active in the church as an altar boy. I remember sitting in Mass one day and sitting there just kind of bored, waiting. But all of a sudden, Mary looked at me. Joseph looked at me. I saw the statue move. I felt this warmth and love come over. And that was a very deep feeling. That never left me. So life went along. I always dreamed, my dad was in World War I, my brother in World War II. I'll have my war. Well, I did. It's called Vietnam. And I'll be a Marine. I don't want to go into the boats or that. I want to be a Marine. And you've heard the story on the video. That experience of God speaking to me in the Marines was one that was obviously a very powerful time. I questioned that for at least a couple of months, thinking somebody's screwing with me. You know, they're kind of saying this stuff, or I'm going into some weird psychotic kind of thing. And Mary and I would pray about that and things of that nature. And yet, over time, the voice would come back as a whisper, and I would listen to it. And I would feel my gut more actually kind of vibrating in my heart, being aware that this is not to be trivialized. I cannot ignore this. I need to listen to this. Mary grew up in a strong pacifist family. I grew up in a family that didn't even know what that was, I think. All of a sudden, there was this change going on in me, and that's not something, as I said in the video, that I've took lightly. We thought I would probably end up in prison for at least 4 years doing that. And I mentioned that the colonel of the base shocked me with his open-heartedness to hearing me. Here in those moments, I had kind of been on call for riot control duty when King was assassinated, and you heard about outside. And so that then developed that whole sense of listening to God. Mary and I, with the Marines, thought the average lifespan of a Marine lieutenant in Vietnam was about 6 months. We thought at least we have this time together and to live it fully. So following that sense of listening to God with Martin Luther King's death, working in the inner cities, feeling no fear of thrusting myself into the inner city, of working with Black Panthers and others, it just seemed to be a natural flow of that listening to where God was leading. Outward Bound, Mary mentioned, open up. That took us out of the inner city to Outward Bound for about 10 years, working with kids out of Harlem and other places. Our family came along. Mary and I grew deeper and deeper in our love. The bigger family, we realized, adopting 3 children out of war, other countries, brings with them a whole agenda that we had not thought was coming along. But yet then we had to work that through, and their struggles to find their way through that. The reality of this listening to the mind and body led me into seminary and the study of wisdom, and then later into a PhD in counseling psychology, around this intrigued with the mind and the soul and the heart and the body. And so following that line, it just seemed like neural biofeedback and the whole mind-body connection of neurophysiology and all of the technology that studied the brain. I fell deeply into that, and I traveled all over the United States studying that and created a practice doing that. Looking back, I've been listening to the stories of men for over 45 years, not men, women and men. And Elders Speak all of a sudden was drawing out my story. I hadn't been sharing my story. And I found it like kind of mind-blowing. To begin to see what was this trend line of listening to God, meditating, yoga, trying to listen to my body, following that journey. And then my story, all of a sudden I'm back working through, what happened with my mother and what really was her story that I didn't hear and what's going on, etc. And so that emerged as Elders Speak unfolded. In that, following that trend line, I retired and went as a volunteer with hospice for about 7 or 8 years, being a person going into homes, journeying with people as they were going home, and then being a chaplain at the hospital, all of that volunteer. Amazing to walk with people in those days and going through different parts of their life. I facilitated, as a facilitator, a brain cancer support group for about 7 years. And that depth of learning about people in that journey, I realized as a pastoral counselor, psychologist blended together, the soul work, the anam cara, the Gaelic of coming alongside and walking with a person a journey, was about that way in which I started to draw together going home. Going home isn't about going to heaven or dying. It was about being present here and the intensity of our life, Mary and I and our children. and now 14 grandchildren, really thrust us into being in the moment as I went through my own 2 heart attacks and the cancer and things, and realized again how God came alongside me and said, it's not your time to go home. And so we journeyed on, and et cetera. Pilgrims together has been a beautiful thing with my... Yep, thank you.
Ron. Whoops. This timer thing kind of silly. Get ready. Ron is kind, gentle, thoughtful, creative, and has a great sense of humor. Ron's passion for education, his seeking of how to best develop and reach each and every one of his students just speaks of his incredible deep dedication to these children. Ron's deep, deep sharing through these 10 months has touched all of us so much. Now it's my turn. Ron's wisdom statement: give thanks for life. Ask penetrating questions with sincerity. Seek the spiritual. Ron, how has your wisdom helped you to know yourself?
There's a phrase I'll get to at the end about, it's from the Greeks, know thyself. And that's what this journey has been about. This is what life has been about. But the first is, I was thinking of this, and we were talking about this. There was 3 elements that you just heard. And so I built a tetrahedron. And the tetrahedron has on 3 sides, each aspect. But on the bottom is what comes from knowing these things. The first is give thanks for life, both in its initial conception and for the people you know through the process. I give thanks to Eileen Tigg, who decided to have a son. Because of her circumstances, she had to pass the son on to others. And she passed the son on to Ed and Nina Scutt, who were childless at the time. They thought they wanted a child. And I think probably after a year and a half, 2 years, they weren't so sure about the decision that they had made. And as Joe and Mary have talked about, it's not an easy path to adopt a child, because every one of us comes in with our own personality, our own characteristics, and they don't all the time just fit together naturally. So I give vast thanks to Eileen and Ed and Nina for doing the very hard work of raising this young man at the time. You also give thanks for life for the people who enter your life. And as a junior in college, Kim Preston entered my life. And Kim, in a conversation we had as we were getting to know each other, I remember leaving that conversation thinking, Kim knows how to raise children. And I'd never given any thought to having children. I was in college. I was not thinking about raising children. I don't know if she was either. But there was something of the character in Kim that made me realize she would be a wonderful mother and a guide to what turned out to be our sons and our grandchildren. So thanks to Kim and all she's brought. Kim also was the reason we went to Stehekin, in a sense. I was looking for a one-room school job, totally naive. That, we thought, oh, we're out west. Must be a million of them. But we went into the Washington State placement office, and there's books and catalogs and all kinds of things of jobs throughout the nation, Washington State. And I sat down at one table, started going through a book. I thought, oh, this is going to take forever. We're never going to find anything. Kim's sitting at another table. She goes, oh, here, Stehekin, Washington. They're looking for a teacher. And it says they're a one-room school. And from that, whether she realizes it or not, she really got us to Stehekin. And I'm eternally thankful for that and for her companionship in a wonderful, wonderful, not always easy, path to this point in time. We also meet people who are influential to us. I mentioned Mr. Brewer, wavy-haired teacher, horn-rimmed glasses, holding down 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet at that time. But my education had been an absolute struggle. I was not an adept student. Reading, writing, mathematics, everything was tough. But Mr. Brewer saw something in me. And this recognition clicked in a way that led me into education. And I'm so thankful for that as well. Then, as a professional, and after working in Stehekin for a while, don't tell me. And I also met 2 very influential people. One was Dr. Jean Sherritt. The other was Dr. Terry Bergenson. And both of them visited Stehekin. Both of them knew of our educational program. And both of them helped us export education to other school districts, to other teachers. And that really gives you the motivation. They believed in us, and they helped us go out into the larger educational community. And seeing that 5-minute signal was shown, there's a picture behind Joe here. And if anything I see today has any value, it's in this picture is iconic for what children need in their education. They need a companionship where they're gathering together. They need imagination. They see this giant. The painting is by N.C. Wyeth. Their imaginations run. There's no screens involved in that imagination of the giant in the clouds. So, if we need to wrestle with anything today concerning children, it's to help them maintain that education that is based on the imagination, on a camaraderie of being together, of healthy things taking place in their life. The second part was ask penetrating questions. As a young man, when I finally learned how to read, started reading about different religions, philosophies, biographies of composers. This was what I was interested in. My buddies were interested in cars. I really wasn't, just naturally. And we all come in differently. But I was interested in these things and asking the questions. So asking a question. When I was teaching in Big Spring, Pennsylvania, a man named Tom Ballestier, basketball coach, called me one night during a wild party Kim and I were having. And he said, could you fill in for me at church? He would go around and talk to the churches in the area. And we always thought he's just doing it recruiting for a basketball team. He says, I can't make the appointment I made at the church. And so I said, sure, I can do it. Remember, we were having a party. And we went to the church, Kim and I, but the question that I had was, why are there so many different religions? Why are there so many different denominations of so many religions? And that's the message that I took. And it was not a message, it was a question. And then I sat down. And this left the congregation wondering, oh my goodness, what do we do now? But what came from that was the fact that each of them was saying, we enjoy worshiping with one another. And that helped answer that question. One.
Sorry to tell you.
Let's go to the next part. And it fits right in. Seek spirituality. I don't care what spirituality you're seeking or you find it's calling you, but the seeking for spirituality is important, at least to me. We have choices. The choices are between materialism and the seeking of the Spirit. And we have come along all line of gradation between those two polar opposites. One is based on cause and effect, the periodic table. The other is based on, hey, there's something bigger than just us right here, right now. So those three things lead to my conclusion, which is know thyself. And the Greeks brought us that. Do we ever know ourselves? It's a hard thing to answer. But we're always learning more about ourselves. And those three foundations around the tetrahedron was what helped me to have a better idea of knowing myself.
Hear, hear.
Wow. We need to give them more time. But you can ask questions. And that's what we're going to do now. Deb and I will be mic runners, so if you have a question, put your hand up. And Morgan is our online. And if you are one of our wonderful people that are watching from afar, you have a chat button that you can push and type in a question, or you can call Morgan. I have the number right here somewhere. Text Morgan, don't call her. Morgan's number to text is 509-433-7772. So we are now opening the floor to questions.
Test. Can you hear me? Hello. Let's give everybody a round of applause. Was that not amazing? So I'm going to give everybody out here a second to think about your question. And oh, we've got one? Oh, Steve has one. Okay, we don't need to. Go ahead, Steve.
All right, I have a question, and it could be to any of the elders. What has this journey meant to you personally? Because 10 months ago, you were all strangers. And to go as deeply as you have, what has that meant to you? And anybody or everybody could answer that. So.
The thought that I would have would be that you continue to meet good people throughout your life, especially when you're looking for good people. They just come. And the experience of working with these people, listening to their life stories, the poignancy of it is amazing. And I'm just deeply appreciative of being able to participate and to get, we would drive from one place to another to meet. And we were sort of like, it was like in high school again. And we shared stories. We were happy about going and doing the work that we were going to do. And I don't know if we were been a band or a debate society or just sneaking out like Joe talked about and traveling together. But it was just, you continue to meet good people in life.
I think what I would say is that everyone has a good story. Everyone has wisdom that they have within themselves. And if we listen, you know, the idea that we have one mouth and two ears, that's because we should be listening twice as much as we're talking, is true. We should be listening to each other.
I was deeply touched by the facilitators. And I kept having this image of them being weavers, of weaving a basket to carry stories of the community, of you and others who have gone before us. And that was very heartwarming to kind of see that way in which they could help us just draw together the common threads.
I would say that with, you know, we all have different degrees of people that we come into contact with or who we hang out with. But at the top are those fellow travelers, those who understand, those who have similar expressions. So we've been running together as fellow travelers. And it's quite a treat. It's been wonderful.
Very true.
All right. So I grew up in Manson in the Chelan Valley, and I had a really good friend that she came to my first birthday party, and then when she was in about 6th grade, they moved to Stehekin for a couple years, I think, and their last name was Wiegand. And I got questions from both her and her sister from their various locations to ask Ron Scutt today. So Ron, the first question is from Rose, my friend Terry's older sister. Rose is now a high school art teacher in the Okanagan. And she says, what has been your philosophy or approach to classroom management?
Tips.
Rosie knows the answer to that question. But it's a blend. It's a balancing between hard work and humor. And if you can strike that balance, things work out very well. It just, as you mentioned their names, I think of them and I can see them. And it's the way it is with all the children. The classroom management came from us caring about one another, coming together each morning and sharing of our work and our play, returning to our homes at the end of the day. And the verse goes on, but we were like a family. And they were both in a class of very, very good young people.
So speaking of the verse, that leads us to Terry's question. One of the things I loved most about each school day was the morning greeting with the entire class.
Right.
Can you talk about the origin of the morning verse? And P.S., I'm pretty sure I can still recite the September morning verse 33 years later.
I gave you a little bit of it, Terry. And where did they come from? They came from the truisms of the class. Each month, we had a different verse, and we tried to capture the essence of the month and what we were doing together. And that morning verse, September, goes, we come together each morning to share of our work and our play. We return to our homes at the end of the day with our minds we think and create. With our hearts, we feel and relate. With our limbs, we carry out our tasks. Together we think, we feel, we act. Together we are the class. Wow.
Sign me up.
Let me add something. The young ladies usually were very dutiful and tried to do the right things. When it came to the young gentlemen in the class, they were clowns and always wanted to be young boys hunt for humor. And there was a humor too, which I'm sure they remember. Yeah.
All right, folks, anyone in the audience have a question? Deb, we've got one right here.
Hello. First of all, the three facilitators, you three are so awesome because year after year, you bring together, I don't know how you do it and get such a wonderful mix of people. Everybody in this group is phenomenal. I enjoyed it immensely. I'm a retired educator, so the educators, the teachers, I really gravitated and connected with your message, and they were both wonderful. And am I correct that you were also an educator too? Or?
Yes.
Joe? Yes, yes.
I was the academic dean of the college.
Okay,
And
there
I
you
taught
go.
with WSU too.
There
And
you
I
go.
taught elementary
Oh.
back in Baltimore.
Ah, all
Fifth grade.
right. You did it all. So, 2011, this is to Ron, the year 2011, you were nominated as Teacher of the Year for your county, was it county district, ESD district, I think?
Yes, for the ESD
Okay.
171.
So I'm bringing a message to you. The U.S. Teacher of the Year, you know him? Jay
Yes.
Jay Mayaborn.
Morobi. Yes.
He has nothing but good things to say about you. He's our awesome son-in-law. He just couldn't say enough about you, Ron. So congratulations and a message from him.
Thank you very much, and I remember Jay well, and he deserved Teacher of the Year. Yeah.
You know, if you don't ask questions, I'm going to keep asking them. So I just want to warn you. Oh, we've got one.
Robin Kay has a question.
So thank you all for participating in this, and amazing what you have discovered. And my question is, I think Glenn alluded to it earlier, that he reached another pivot point, and I'm curious, kind of based on what you've learned, what you've experienced, and sort of what you reflected on the last 9 or 10 months, what's next for you? Has it opened up new things that you're going to do, or different ways to approach things? What has shifted?
It's for all of you. Yes.
I would say that, sometimes, and I've experienced that with what I talked about, is that sometimes a shift happens instantly, and you know that my life has changed, and half of those have been that. The others are, you understand that you're going through transition by looking and catching up with it. It's already underway. And you kind of look and figure, oh, I've been going through this. This started back here, and then you look at the back trail. So I do feel, I've been notified in a way that this is something to pay attention to now, going forward. This and our work and our digging in and our, this has been an interesting thing. To go and deep dive this much into yourself and really examining you and those around you and the circumstances that were so hard and that were so exhilarating. And one is inevitably tied to another. So I don't know yet. That's the answer.
And I think that maybe none of us know yet that things come upon us and change our direction. And I would love to see what happens next, but I have no idea.
Yeah, how about you, Joe?
I'm aware as I turned 80 this year that the feeling of vulnerability and the feeling at times of being unseen, it's a different dynamic of aging in our culture. Getting a knee replaced 4 weeks ago, and just, you know, the way in which what's coming, I don't know what's coming, but in a way, it takes a whole different mindset to be present at this point in life and still engage life.
Right.
And so I'm at that juncture of saying, how do I engage at this point in time? And I think there are many ways when I look at our climate that I feel strongly engaged of how do we care for this earth.
It's been invigorating for me. I know what I want to do now. I write stories about what's happened in school and whatnot, and I want to get these stories out to people. It's reinvigorated my desire to see children treated in a more childlike aspect. We have to do that if for the future, whatever unfolds, it's going to be because of the way we are treating our children. And children in Stehekin have they're so lucky. Probably they don't realize it right now, but they will. And I want to encourage parents, grandparents, everybody to get a hold of the way we're raising children and to find the best ways we can to do that.
Might I add something to Joe's, just a thought, as he spoke of vulnerability, and I am feeling the vulnerabilities of aging, and how I look at that is that I can better understand what my wife, my daughters have experienced going through their lives, to be more vulnerable, to be a target. So I take that and embrace it and say thank you.
Just the jewels of wisdom that have so many have popped out from all of you as you look at your life. I mean, the wisdom that comes from actually being an elder that looks inquisitively at what has happened and then being able to share that back with the world, with children, with adults, with everybody. And then I think this is an amazing process of elder speak. And yet in our culture, we're not really listening to our elders. And I'm curious about how we reignite the excitement about elder wisdom to the world as it is right now, in terms of hearing this. And I feel that you've got it, the spark is burning. How do we turn it into a bonfire?
That's a good question, Kay. How do we ignite? Do any of you have thoughts on how do we ignite the wisdom of our elders to community?
I think we have a responsibility, and those who have gone before us in elder speak, to bring our voice into the arena of whatever may be happening in your life, my life, to step out and engage. I think we have been empowered to engage as we have here to carry that forward.
Agree 100%. Yeah.
Well, I'm about 5 years older than most of you, and I've been where you are now, and I share the absolute wonder of the experience. But my question is sort of related to the last question, and that is, how do we remain relevant as we age and perhaps our physical abilities diminish a bit? How do we remain relevant in our sense of self-worth? My feeling is that as we age, we start to become marginalized a bit because we're not actively working. Our peer group changes and so on. So how do each of you remain relevant and feel that you're continuing to contribute to this world that we all care so much about?
How do you stay engaged and relevant, Mary?
Oh. Wow. I was thinking mentoring. That's a good way to practice the listening and also be influencing the person that you're mentoring. And there are so many people who are open to be mentored, whether they're young people who perhaps are not having a good time in school, or maybe an older person who is new to the community, who needs a way to relate to people, or maybe it's another person in your neighborhood that that just needs to have somebody to listen to them, draw them out. I don't know. There's dozens of ways of mentoring people, but I would suggest doing that.
I would say as well to continue to practice your practices. To be engaged in growth, your inner game, and to trust the system that you will find outlets for that. I think of Dr. Bob Anderson and as a mentor, and there was a time when I was just kind of not flummoxed, but where I was talking about this amazing contact that I'd made in Wall, North Dakota or South Dakota, and I ran into this guy who was had a thing about, I won't go into this. What I want to say is that I think if we present ourselves and are open and sensitive and listening, we will be invited to and called upon. It's just do what you do. And his words were, pay attention. I went through all this and he said, what should I do, Bob? And he just kind of, pay attention. Pay attention to what is around you. And don't let any of it slip by, but just as a mundane thing.
When I was in college, there was a pool hall and nice pool tables, but to play on the pool tables, you put down a dime, and there was an elder who went around and collected those dimes. And I thought to myself at the time, whatever I do, I better stay engaged. So the first part of that is the will to be engaged as you age. And I think the more you build that idea of continuing to be engaged in life, it's opportunities to do that will be there for you. But that's a tough question because the marginalization is so prominent as we age.
Any thoughts, Joe?
I think they've said it well. The themes that pop out to me are, one, take care of ourselves. Stay healthy, whatever that means to you. Really value that. And the other, listen to your neighbors, the people around you, and make a decision. I'm going to connect.
Okay, we have an online question that came in through the live stream. How do each of you connect spiritually in your life? What is the deeper current of meaning that touches your heart? And they also say, thank you for sharing with us. This has been so beautiful.
So an easy question.
Super simple. Sum it up in 10 words or less. Just kidding.
Yes. Yes or no?
That was 3.
No answer?
Well, I think it depends on what you mean by spirituality. You know, being connected with a community that worships together or studies together or sings together, lots of different ways to express your spirituality. But I think the community part is really important because the more isolated we become, the more hard it is to break out and to make any difference. And then do what Glenn was talking about, do what you do well, you know, to express yourself through whether it's music or writing or, you know, whatever it is that lights your fire, as they used to say back in the day.
I feel tempted to ask you to read the question again, seriously.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How do you each connect with your spirituality in your life? What is the deeper current of meaning that touches your heart?
For me, to look at that takes me back to the awakening that I had in the Marine Corps. And it was basically realizing there is that of God in all people.
That's right.
Everyone. And that God loves everyone. And to learn how to watch for that of God, how that's happening in their words or their life, and to speak to that of God, whatever that means to them. We live in a world where to me, the better term is interspirituality. We have been nurtured by so many streams of water running into our lives from many traditions. And we are, if anything, we have an abundance of options. And how just to simplify it, be aware of that of God, look to that of God, speak to that of God, whatever it means to that person.
That's it.
Really, the do unto others thing.
Yes.
You know, the guy who's outside of Plaza Superjet, who can't dial his phone. He's sitting and to stop. What can you? Do you need help? Do you know how to? You know, and going through that, and then you walk away. These connections are always around us.
Yes.
Again, that pay attention from Dr. Bob Anderson, and you don't have to worry, what can I do? Because it will come to you. And once you open up to it, once you just begin to decide to pick up that piece of trash as you're walking by it, or help that, or think that a better thought, or say a prayer as you move by someone who obviously needs it.
Right.
So what comes to me, and you guys can keep talking about it, is how did you come to that understanding? I mean, where in you did you grow into that awareness?
Lifelong, I guess, really.
Lifelong.
Well, I mean, it's been a process. These pivot points, these openings, these these painful, painful things, these loss, suffering, back to, what's his name? Who said, at the very end, anything can happen, but we retain our ability, how we respond. Victor Frankl, yeah, whatever. Yes, I mean, and this is crucially important. He got that in the prison camps, in the concentration camps. But to be able to know that, I mean, to walk forward through life and all these things that interchanges come, to know that we can decide to do the right thing.
Tag on to that, I remember a rabbi saying, love God with all your heart and mind. The strength was not in that. And do unto your neighbor as yourself. And then he paused and he said, all of the rest is just commentary. And how much time we spend on the commentary. And we miss the simple truth in all spiritual traditions. That's the core of it.
Amen.
Okay, folks, we're getting to the end of the Q&A. So I'm going to ask a question, and then if anyone else has a question, that will be our last one. So my question is for Glenn. Glenn, when I watched your video and then heard you talk, I was really struck by the resilience that you showed in being able to love your wife so well through the end, and then love again. And I'm just wondering, I'm also one of those emotional people. You're all just going to have to live with it for a second. I'm wondering if there's anything that you can attribute that resilience to. I just heard you talk about how the only thing we can control is how we react to something, but I know it's not quite that simple. So what kept you moving forward? Certainly sometimes I'm sure it was very difficult. So what kept you moving forward?
You know, I read this morning about the last month of March. I journal all the time, but I had all this, so I read that just to be touched again in that way. And I also read a letter that I wrote to my granddaughter on her first birthday that explained all that took place during that time. Marnie was sick and ill, and Jenna was waiting to be born. And we had some of the worst times that we ever had with a diagnosis one day. Then in the morning, we get the call from Anna. She's about ready to give birth. And how that changed so much, that influence of turning from our terrible, debilitating news to the hope of new life within us and around us. And Marnie made it very, very easy. She was an incredible teacher with her wide smile. People would come to visit her and they'd leave weeping because of they told her all their problems and, oh, we love you. I mean, it was, you know, she made it very easy to love and open that up, to allow herself to be loved.
Thank you.
It sounds, what I hear you saying is that love provides you resilience.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in the moment, I'm still just kind of still spinning the other things, and I just know that you can't go wrong by doing the right thing. Yeah. And if you just kind of keep that dangling in front of you, then act upon it.
Wonderful. All right, folks, anybody else have any questions? Oh, thank you, Robin.
I would like you to set up a booth in local schools and sit in the booth with a sign that says, "Young people, I've got the answers. Come here."
That's good. Very good.
I second that.
Very
I
good.
second that. Okay, that was a pretty short one. Does anybody else have a question? Okay, we're going to leave it there. Can we give them one more round of applause, please?
Thank you, Morgan. And to everyone in the audience online and here for your questions. If any of you are interested in doing an Elder Speak program, you can contact us. We are open to starting a program to teach other people how to do this. We wrote a book. It's in the lobby. But we would also like to do a program next year or the year after, really teach other people how to do this so we can spread it. Now for closing remarks, I'd like to have Dr. Stroud come on stage. Steve is a naturopathic physician in Wenatchee, and he has been an amazing mentor for Deb and Robin and I. And he puts so much heart into the Ripple Foundation. He's one of the founders, and he's the guy who runs the workshops. And we'd like him to come up and give some closing remarks.
Thank you for those kind words. Is this on? Well, I know whatever I'm going to say after this is humbled by what we just witnessed, and I'm not sure that I can add too much more from the wisdom that we have heard, but let me just hit a few logistical notes. This program is part of the Ripple Foundation, and somebody asked the question, how can they ignite this wisdom, right? Support the Ripple Foundation. The Ripple Foundation supports Elder Speak. Elder Speak supports this type of remarkable work, and as Teresa just said, we would love to bring this to other communities. Can you imagine that this is the only way that this happens right here, right now, that we're experiencing? But can you imagine if this was throughout the state or throughout the country? So we need your support, person-wise, financial-wise. We're a nonprofit, so we would appreciate that. Also, as Teresa mentioned, there are books outside for sale. Deb and Teresa spent effort putting together a book on Elder Speak and how to create that program. And then I wrote a book, and I co-wrote a book with Laura that is also for sale out there, another way to support us and the foundation. So we would appreciate that. The Ripple Foundation also has other courses and classworks. We have a class coming up. It's called Energy Dynamics in Relationships. It's about bridging the conscious and subconscious patterns and habits that we have and bring to all of our relationships so that we can make more and more conscious, loving, kind responses in our interactions with other people. Okay? So all that's going on. I've got some notes. Let me see. Oh, these are other people's notes. You know how confusing that would be?
I don't recognize the handwriting.
All right. So
I can give you some notes.
it's hard to even contain all that was shared today, but there's a couple things that I know that I commit to not taking for granted. One is breathable air, as we have experienced. The other is end of summer rains, right? Beautiful. But the most important is wise insight from both strangers and friends, that I will not take that for granted. That is a commitment that I have. One of the things that ElderSpeak brings is the delving into the gifts that we all have. So if you could imagine for a minute, you walk into a room with 6 strangers and they say, well, what are your gifts? And then to spend the next 9-10 months delving into that. This is the end product of that. The courage and the time and the vulnerability that it takes to create such a phenomenal outcome. But just imagine if somebody says, what are your gifts? How many would stand up and say, here they are, right? I like to sit and try to scratch out a few notes on some of the highlights that I've heard. And I'm just going to take a moment to run through them. Perhaps you will remember some of your own. Perhaps these will resonate with you. But one of them was, what are your gifts? What am I going to do next year? Listen to the voice of God within. We are all here for a purpose. I came from an immigrant family. There's been a shift. This too shall pass. Let the world stand aside. Don't bank worry. We are not in control. Be vulnerable. Be humble. Let's sing and play music. I will have my war. And I can find my way through. We all come in it differently. Going home is about being present. So I know that you've got memories and thoughts from this evening and this afternoon. I thank you. We all thank you for being here. One more round of applause. We're going to meet out front to have some snacks, buy some books, and donate to the foundation, all right? Snacks. We have snacks outside. You're welcome to come and chat and rub elbows and visit for a while, and we'll see you out front, okay?